Hi there, welcome to Victim to Victor, the podcast dedicated to empowering abuse survivors and inspiring healing, hope and positive change. I'm Verma, a published author, and in every episode I'll sit down with a guest and embark on an insightful conversation about trauma as well as practical strategies to start the healing process. So let's get started. I hope you enjoy the show. And here is lovely Heidi Brocke, all the way from St. Louis.
Hello. It's actually Brocke, but I like it when people say Brocke, but some people say Broke, and that's, I don't.
Heidi Brocke. So, as I mentioned in my introduction, Heidi is a toxic relationship awareness and healing specialist, and she spent 14 years in a very emotionally and narcissistically abusive relationship, which we will go more into in today's episode. And we'll talk about, just toxic relationships in general and spotting the red flags. So it'd be great to just learn more about yourself, Heidi, and, where you come from and where you are today.
Well, I always tell people, if you want to hear my story, you better get a drink.
Right, 1 minute. Oh, wow. So where were you born, first of all?
So this is actually a significant part of my story is where I was born.
Oh.
I was raised on a little dairy farm in Bozeman, Montana. So on one of the states way out west. And I was raised in a little tiny Christian community. And the school, there was a Christian school there. We were in the same church. So I was really with the same people every day till I was a senior in high school.
Oh, wow.
So the community was very close knit. Everybody knew everybody. It was very, I would say, sheltered. Yeah. It's not that we didn't travel outside the community, but it just, that's where our life existed. Yes. And then when I left to go to grad school, I moved across the country by myself. And that's kind of where I put because I always wondered how I got into the toxic relationships that I had gotten into in my life. And when I look back, I think when I left that community, I really thought that everybody in the world functioned like my perception of that community. Now looking back, obviously, that community looks different to me than it did growing up. But growing up, it was everybody protected everybody. Everybody wanted, the best interest. Everybody had your best interest in mind. Everybody wanted you to succeed. And I think I left there thinking everyone was like that,
Yeah.
And so shortly after I entered grad school, I met my former husband. And that was one of the toxic relationships in my life. And, I was all of a sudden in it before I realized this doesn't feel right, but it must be my problem, or it's something I need to fix, or I've never been a wife before. How do I know how to do this type of thing? And so I spent a lot of time thinking it was me, Okay.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you start to develop that feeling of, I must be the bad one for, and the narcissism is obviously the good guy, because that's what we always think, because they make us believe that. And and it's just so much negative self-talk, inner critic kicks in, and it's just so difficult to actually even get away from that. I mean, you spent how many years in this relationship? 14 years. Wow.
14. I was married for 12, and I raised 2 daughters in it. Okay. I don't know how much of my story you want me to tell you, but as it ended, I ended up leaving everything. I was one of the ones that you hear about that just left everything and basically ran away. In that, I left my daughters to begin with. And if somebody said, could you do that again? I don't know. I don't even know how I did it. It was to the point where I realized that if I don't get out of this, this is the only thing that my daughters see. They don't have an example of a normal relationship. They don't have an example of a mom. People were very judgmental, I'm certain, because when I left, I just moved away. And my girls had been in that relationship just as long as I had. They were tough. They were 11 and 13. And one of the things that kind of kept me going was, when you're in a toxic relationship, we're in denial. The toxic person is going to deny any misbehavior. If you're unhappy, it's because you're an unhappy person. Or, if you wouldn't act like this, then I wouldn't act like that.
Oh, yeah.
And so my girls were pretty versed to that, but I also knew that I had been protecting them. I was saying stuff like, Dad just had a bad day. Or, that's just how Dad is. Let's not make him mad tonight, because then we're not going to have a good night. So I was always kind of in denial of how bad it was. And I was always making excuses to try and protect my kids. And I realized too, by the time they get to be 18, they get to make the decision on what type of relationship they have with them. And if they don't get exposed and actually see it, they're going to step out into the world and choose relationships just like this. So even though I did not want to leave them, I knew that I had to get out and I had to get myself healthy and healed so that I was there for them when the time came. And so I spent almost 5 years without my kids.
And where were you during that time?
I moved 4 hours south. That's how I got to St. Louis. I moved 4 hours south, and I say I restarted my life. Like, that was easy. I had no direction. Toxic relationships, the toxic personality really likes to instill self-doubt in us.
Yeah.
So it makes it very difficult for us to make decisions. An example that I use of that is when I was in this toxic relationship, I was going to go get my hair cut. I was going to get it trimmed. And so you get there and you decide, oh, I want a whole new cut. So you get your hair all cut off and you're all excited because you feel like you have a style and you have this little boost of self-confidence for 3 seconds. And the toxic personality says something like, oh, I liked it better the other way. Or why did you cut it off? Or, well, now you don't look good.
Goodness.
So the next time you go get your hair cut, you're not thinking, how does Heidi want to wear her hair? You're thinking, how do I think he wants me to wear my hair?
Mm-hmm.
And those type of things start as a very slow drip. You would never point out the control or the emotion that goes into that. But 14 years in that, with repetitive situations like that, it was very difficult for me to make any decision, because what if I made the wrong one? So in that 5 years, thinking I was going to rebuild, the first 3 years were awful. I had no direction. I had nobody that understood what I had just come out of. I had nobody that would help me make decisions. At the end of the day, I now realize nobody's supposed to help you make decisions. But when you're out there, you figure out in a toxic relationship that if you just don't make a decision, the decision will make itself. Yeah. So rather than making the wrong one, we don't make one. Well, when you have to start a new business and you have to start a new life, there's decisions to be made. So I really had to pour a lot of energy into my healing, which was not fun either, because I had no education on this. I still didn't know what I was in. And, the triggers that you get after you leave are very intense, and you aim them at the people that are safe, And so I went through a lot of that. And, it wasn't until about 5 years after I left that I realized, okay, I don't think your girls are going to be in your life. I hadn't been able to talk to them on the phone. I hadn't seen them. There was no holidays with them. There was no communication with them, hardly ever, unless there was an emergency. Now, when there was an emergency, they would sneak and they would call me, but, they were also too scared to leave at the time. And so I decided I had to figure out something that was going to get my life moving, because 5 years, I'm probably not going to have the relationship that I want with them. And that's when I decided I was going to start coaching. Okay. I was not coaching in this by any means. I didn't talk about this when I was in it. I didn't want anybody to know that I had gone through this. So I wasn't going to coach in this. And so I started coaching in making yourself a priority. And this is kind of how this business evolved. And after doing that for about 6 months, I started realizing that the people that were coming to me for that were coming out of relationships like I had just been in because they didn't know how to put themselves first. And then accidentally I'd find myself using examples, and then people were like, wait, what, you've been in it? And so I thought, okay, well, maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I hired a business coach because as I said to you before we started recording, I am a chiropractor by trade.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't have to market my chiropractic business. Somebody hurts their neck and they find you, right? So I had no knowledge on marketing. And so I hired a business coach, and she said, well, you're going to have to find a niche because there's coaches out. I mean, everybody's a coach. And so she gave me a week that I could think of something that I had to offer that I knew I could stand behind, and that not everyone would be doing. And the toxic relationship thing was the only thing I could think of.
Yeah.
And so I told her that, and she goes, yes, that's what you're doing. And I remember distinctly going, yeah, no, that is not what I'm doing. I am absolutely not going to do that. But just as a test, I started throwing up some of the character traits, or what you would call red flags, on my Facebook page. And my Facebook page doubled in about 3 months. I mean, it wasn't huge. It's still not huge, but it made me realize that people were seeking this information. And that was at the end of 2014. And by 2016, I had started this. 5 years I did both chiropractic and this. And last year, 2020, I retired from healthcare after 24 years. And I actually do this full time now. So what I do, not that I want to talk about my business the whole time, but really what I do is I do a ton of education, because the people that are involved in toxic relationships, and you could probably relate to this, we are 100% focused on the behavior of the toxic person. Yeah. This is what they're doing, and this is what they're saying. And I don't understand why they're doing and saying it. So what I figured out through developing, and while I was developing this, I was having to put myself back in my situation because I didn't want to remember it. So for years, I didn't think about it. So I had to put myself back to remember the things that happened, remember how it went. And I started focusing not on what he was doing and not on what he was saying. And I was focusing on why he does it and why he says it. Okay. So when I have a client come to me, I take their focus off of the behavior, and we go down into why the toxic person does it. Because when you're standing in the middle of it, it's very confusing. But when you can see what's motivating the toxic personality, you just go, oh my gosh, this is so simple. Yeah. And once you can think the way they think, you can get your power back. So that's basically what I do. And then I help the people through that first 4-year thing that I did with the being able to not question yourself and get some direction in your life and find your values back. So that's my little business speech. And how I got in that, I don't know, but that's what I do now. As a toxic relationship awareness and healing specialist, I'm basically an educator is what I'm doing.
Fantastic. Yeah. And education is key, because without education, how can you heal? How can you accept and try and forgive yourself for what happened? Because ultimately, that's the requirements in order to move on and to heal.
And I think too, we sit in these relationships and we think like, how come they can't just be normal? Why can't they just be nice? And we ask them to change, and we beg them to change, and we'll pray that they'll change. And in reality, they're wired completely different than us. In their defense, they're not like us at all, but we keep looking for ourselves in them and then wonder why we're not seeing it.
Oh, so true. Yeah. And it is interesting because I know that, online you'll see that people go on about the narcissistic gene, but then obviously there's other, debaters who say that it just stems from childhood. But then my question is, why are they all similar? Why are all narcissists, the way that they function, it's similar, where they start off with a love bombing and then
So this is my opinion, and this is anything that I say is based off of my experience or the experience of the people I've coached. I've probably walked 1,000 people out of a toxic relationship by now, and so I don't want people to think I'm the know-all, the end-all, because I've just put this together on my gathering information. Yeah. So if you go back to why they all, it seems like they've been to a college for this, right? Somebody's trained them because they all act the same. In reality, in my opinion, you just talked about love bombing. At the beginning of the relationship, everything seems fantastic.
Oh, good.
Right? Everything's good. They love everything about you. They love your hair. They love that you're independent. They love your family. And the reason that is because when you step into a relationship, you are looking for certain things.
Yeah.
Right. We have goals to get, we're looking for companionship. We're looking for partnership. We're looking for emotional support, intimacy. And so you say that, or you present that, and they go, oh, that's exactly what I want. And so then we go, oh, good. So we head down this road of building a relationship, thinking our goals are the same.
Yeah. Because
in reality, if they told us what their real goal for being in relationships are, we would go, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Now, when I use the word toxic, I started using the word toxic before it was everywhere. Toxic isn't a diagnosis. And I think that's one thing that people have to remember. Toxic isn't a diagnosis, it's an adjective. Yeah. That's used to describe any relationship in the status that it's in that's not healthy for you. Yeah. But the toxic personality, whether it's the bully on the playground or whether it's the most extreme type that you hear about, their motivation is the exact same thing. And the motivation that is behind all of their behavior is insecurity in themselves. Yeah. So in the beginning, when they're saying, oh, those are my goals too, they're really standing with their fingers crossed behind their back, because if they said, oh, I'm just in this so that I feel secure in myself, they wouldn't be able to draw people into relationships with them. No. So it's back to your original question. Yeah. They are so self-centered on their need for self-security that it's just coincidental that their behaviors seem the same. The toxic personality needs to feel four things. And so they get up in the morning. Let's say, you get up in the morning. You get up in the morning and your feet are already on fire because, oh, I've got a 3-year-old. And what was I supposed to do for this client? And and I forgot to send that email. And you're already thinking of everything you need to do for other people so that everybody else is taken care of. That's how we operate. The toxic personality, they more get up in the morning and go, how am I going to feel secure today? Oh, okay. And then as they move through the day, control, power, attention, and admiration is what they need in order to feel secure. Okay. So they get so ingrained in that self-centered that some of their behavior is not always intentional. No. So like I sometimes, people ask me that all the time. Do they consciously know that they're doing this? And my opinion again on this is, when you're in the grocery store and you bump into somebody, you bump into somebody and you don't go, oh, I wonder if I should apologize. Wait, was that their fault or was that my fault? Or we don't think about that. We go, oh, I'm so sorry. Right? Some of the behavior that the toxic personality does is about as second nature as, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Because of their need for those four things all the time, they say and do things very automatically. Okay. Yeah. I think some of the bigger stuff is definitely premeditated. If we have somebody who's a cheater, or if we have somebody has an addiction, there's certainly some of the behaviors that are premeditated. Yeah. But walking in the house after work and saying, how come you loaded the dishwasher that way? Yeah. What they're feeling there is they're walking in the house. They need to make sure, 1, they get your attention. 2, they feel power. And 3, they feel control. And by saying, how come you loaded the dishwasher that way? They get your attention. They feel power because you immediately feel like you didn't load the dishwasher right. Yeah. And then they proceed to show you how to load the dishwasher, which is control. Absolutely. And so they're feeling secure the minute they walk in the house.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Meanwhile,
yeah, and I guess that's quite, I can actually relate to that, because when I had my phase of feeling insecure, I craved all those 3 things as well. And and I think it's quite common amongst anyone who's insecure.
Yeah. And if you think about the time when you felt secure in your life, like think back to a time where you felt secure and describe that for me. Like, what did your life look like?
Oh, well, I never needed attention of anybody because I already had that love and confidence within myself. So right. So it's the things that we put into our own life that make us feel secure.
You know, the job is going well, the family's doing good, you're at the gym 3 times a week, you've lost 5 pounds, your friend circle is good. That's all your energy going into your life. So then you don't need acceptance and affirmation from other people because you're doing good, right? Okay, the toxic personality, again, in my opinion, it doesn't matter how much they put into their own life. They can't put enough into their own life to ever fulfill that need. So they have to place people strategically in their life that supply them with those 4 things. So if the listeners are finding themselves in a toxic relationship, you're supplying that person with 1 or more of the control, power, attention, or admiration.
Absolutely. And I guess these are the kind of things that my listeners need to probably watch out for, is just behaviors like this. And what else is can my listeners watch out for if they're currently in a relationship and they're kind of questioning if it's toxic or not?
So the baseline of the toxic person is what I just gave you. They're looking for security. Okay. They need to feel those 4 things from people throughout the day in order for them to feel secure. Now, there's different things that bring them these things. Most of the people that are listening are probably in intimate type toxic relationships. But as you know, there's toxic family relationships, there's toxic work situations, there's toxic friendships. And these type of things can be applied when you're observing. You know, these relationships are confusing. So what I just told you with the self-security and then those 4 things, if people can start observing their behavior and instead of reacting to it, take 2 seconds to go, okay, is that control? Is that power? Is that attention? Or is that admiration? They will start understanding the motivation behind the toxic personality. Now, the other thing that I make sure people know is the toxic personality is emotionally abusive. And I don't know that a lot of people actually understand what emotional abuse is, because I misunderstood it when I was in my relationship. I thought it was yelling and screaming. Right. And I lived with a yeller and a screamer and a name caller. And I was just like, but I've been in it for 8 years now. I'm totally used to that. So we think we're getting strong because we're used to it, when really it's our body going, she can't sustain this type of emotional abuse, so we're going to desensitize you.
Okay.
So our body comes desensitized. So now when they call you names, in the beginning, it bothered you and you cried or you got upset. And that's what they were seeking, is they were seeking an emotional reaction from you.
Okay.
Well, now you're so used to it, you don't cry or get upset, and they don't get that reaction. So what happens? The names get meaner and the belittling gets harsher, because they're seeking that reaction. So what emotional abuse is if they can say or do something that makes you feel something. So if they can say or do something that makes you happy, that makes you sad, that makes you cry, that makes you upset, that makes you feel guilty, they feel in control of your emotions. And control is one of the things that they need to feel secure. So I always encourage people, if you're the one that right now is sitting in this state of confusion, start really focusing on not giving them the reaction immediately, and ask yourself quick: control, power, attention, or admiration. Because as soon as you can start pinpointing that they're actually after security in themselves, you're going to start understanding your situation much, much better. And what a lot of people do is they just wake up one morning and go, I can't believe this is what I've been living with. I'm not doing this one more day. Right. But the toxic personality keeps our attention on them by criticizing and, keeping us on that treadmill of seeking their approval. So we don't have time to focus on ourselves, and we don't have time to really dig down and figure out what's going on.
So true. So true. So so it's about just questioning what's going on, just having that self-awareness, because like you said, we kind of lose ourselves in these relationships. And I know it's so easy to allow the other person to affect you. And again, it's about trying to not let whatever they say or the way they act, just trying not to allow that in, and to stop letting it affect you. So how exactly can we do that?
Okay, so again, they're seeking the emotion. And remember, we are emotional people, and we're dealing with people who are not emotional. Now, the thing that you need to remember also is you didn't pick these people.
No.
If That's why you see people in repetitive toxic relationships and they say, I think my picker is broken because I keep picking the same people.
Yeah.
Well, the people that end up in toxic relations are usually kind, caring, loving, giving, supportive, conflict avoiders. We want to keep the peace. So if you are a person who wanted control, power, attention, and admiration, you're going to seek out the personality that's kind, caring, loving, giving. So what we don't realize is they actually targeted us, because if they would have got to know us and we didn't have the personality that would supply them with those 4 things, they wouldn't have stayed around.
No.
So we know that we're targeted into these relationships. So the first thing I tell people to do is when you get criticized, we are emotional. So we immediately feel an emotional reaction when we're criticized. Mm-hmm. We get sad, or we get mad, or we get down on ourselves. And rather than allow that emotion to come in, stop yourself for 2 seconds and say, okay, rather than focusing on this is what they said, focus on why did they say it? Because that takes the emotion out. And when you can focus on why they said it, it's for one of those 4 things. Yeah. You're never going to fully understand your situation until you can fully understand what motivates them. Okay. And as soon as you can start understanding that, we have to understand too, we can't change them. No. They are going to be who they are because of the needs that they have. Yeah. The only thing we can control is how we let it affect us and what decisions we make to do about it. Mm-hmm. And that may be understanding the motivation behind it and being able to stay in the relationship, or understanding the motivation behind it and using that understanding to empower you to leave that relationship.
Yeah. And I know a lot of the time it's good to try to ignore them, and ghosting can work, but it's so difficult to ghost them. Oh my goodness, when you're stuck in that cycle. Mm-hmm. So difficult.
Yes. The other thing, and I don't know your entire situation, but when you're in it, it is very difficult because they instill self-doubt and they instill fear, not necessarily always fear for your physical safety, but fear. We're fearful of disappointing them. We're fearful of making them upset. Yeah. We're fearful of confrontation with them. And so if someone is trying to make a decision on whether to stay or to leave the relationship, it is way too big of a decision to make without the understanding of how they operate. Because if it was an easy decision to make, you would have already made it. Yeah. So for the listeners who are right now trying to make a decision on whether to stay or go, take that decision, put it in a little box, and stick it on the shelf for a minute.
Okay.
And instead, start asking yourself which one of those 4 things they're after through their behavior. And the more you learn about the way they function, that decision is going to make itself. Either you're going to be able to function within the relationship, or you're going to realize, yeah, I'm not doing this one more day.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, I love that. How about for my listeners who are currently on the dating scene? What are the red flags? What should they be looking out for to avoid getting themselves in a narcissistic relationship?
So we are much stronger than we think, because we often see the red flags. Yeah. We often have things that happen very early on that we go, oh, that made me feel yucky, or that was a weird thing to say, or, he's been late 12 times and I keep, we often see them. But because we are emotional, we give people the benefit of the doubt. Mm-hmm. Okay. Not that it's a problem with us, because having a good, kind, caring, loving personality is good. We just have to be a lot pickier on who we're good, kind, caring, and loving to. Yeah. Because when you're on the dating scene, you're going to see some of these red flags. But because our personality, we don't want to be the bad guy and not go out on a second date. So we do, even though our gut's telling us not to. Or, they talk about themselves the entire date and they never ask us, but we just figure that they're super successful and they just enjoy talking about that. That would be a red flag if all they do is talk about themselves and never talk to you. Mm-hmm. But we have been taught to don't judge a book by its cover. We've been taught that relationships are hard. We've been taught to give the benefit of the doubt. So we are continually trying to foster these relationships that probably right off the bat, your gut said, yeah, probably not. And the other thing that we tend to do is we put everybody else before us.
Yeah.
So some people are out there on the dating site, we're actually seeing the red flags. Yeah. But we still want to put other people before us. So the hardest thing you have to do if you're on a dating site and you've been in a toxic relationship is you have to, one, notice the red flag, but two, be true to yourself and choose yourself. You know, I used to be the one that would walk into a room and hope somebody liked me.
Goodness.
Now I walk into a room and I hope there's somebody in there I'm going to like, and I don't worry about it if they don't.
Okay.
You know, and that's how you have to proceed. If you go on a date with somebody and you get a red flag and you never see them again, so what?
Exactly.
But we're very programmed to, yeah, but I don't want them to think bad of me and I don't want to hurt their feelings. So even though I don't really want to go out again, now somehow I'm on the 13th date.
Oh, yeah.
So it's about observing it, but it's also about learning to put yourself first because you deserve to be first, and this is for the dating site people, treat every date that you go on like a job interview.
Yeah.
If you had a business and you had to hire an assistant that had to work next to you every day, you wouldn't pick the 7th best resume because you want a successful business. But what do we do in our relationships? We pick the one with the 7th best resume, and then we try to make a successful relationship out of it. So rather than feeling bad, just know you're only going to hire the person that fits your job description.
Yeah.
And I, a lot of times, have my clients write a job description before they start dating.
Oh, really?
So that you don't get so clouded when you're dating. If my job description says this and this person doesn't fit it, why are you trying to make him fit in that job description?
Yeah.
You wouldn't hire an assistant that didn't fit the job description.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll hire people that don't fit our job description for a successful relationship. And we think things like, oh, that's okay, I can fix it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. Just had a bad upbringing, so I'm just going to be more supportive.
Oh,
no.
I think, yeah. And one of the things that I question now is about compromising. Should you really be compromising your values and standards to be with somebody?
If you are changing yourself to fit into a relationship, you are settling.
Yeah, I love that. And again, that's something else that we're taught from such a young age. You have to compromise.
Yeah. And actually, that's after when I work with people, the whole second half of when I work with them is teaching them they can compromise, but they can no longer compromise themselves.
Brilliant.
You know, if you think about your values, because you just said values, our values within a toxic relationship disappear.
They do. Yeah.
Why do they disappear? Because having values are kind of boundaries. And crossing our boundaries is something that gives the toxic person the feeling of power.
Yeah.
So it's almost a challenge for them to steal your values, because if you don't have values to stand on, it's way easier for them to control you, which makes them feel way more secure.
Wow. So there is no chance that a narcissistic person would ever date an empowered woman who is, you know, she's confident and she sticks to.
They would date somebody like that.
Okay.
And in the beginning, they would love everything about that person. Because in the beginning, remember the 4 things I just talked about? Yeah. Okay. In the beginning, that person is showing them a ton of attention and a ton of admiration. Yeah. Because the beginning of relationships are like that. This is the best person. And the toxic personality will tell you, I've been looking for you my whole life. You know, you're my soulmate. Where have you been? So we throw all this attention and admiration to them, which makes them feel secure. Yeah. Okay. So a successful woman is going to make them look really good. That's admiration from the public eye.
Right.
But as soon as they know enough about your securities and insecurities, your strengths and weaknesses, you know, the secrets that you have, they're going to move you from the one who supplies them with attention and admiration into the one that's feeding them with most of the power and control. Right. So as soon as that shift happens, then they're no longer going to allow you to work the hours you did. They're no longer going to like you hanging out with work colleagues. They're going to tell you you're not making near enough money as you should be. Or, you know, all the things they said they admired you in the beginning are going to be the same things that they try to break you down with later. So they would actually go after a successful person, but they're going to try and turn that person into what they need.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Break her down.
Yeah, because if you talk to a lot of the people that are coming out of these relationships, they're trying to get back to who they were before, the confident person that knew what she wanted.
Yeah.
I remember looking in the mirror, and obviously you can see that I have black hair. I had very dark brown hair. And 3 weeks after I got married, he told me he wished he always married a blonde. Okay. So through 14 years, I was highlighting my hair because I want to make him happy and I want to be approved of. Well, it didn't matter what I did to my hair. He still never liked it because he had no intention of approving of it. No. Because when they don't approve of you, where is your attention? It's on them 100% of the time. So I remember one day looking in the mirror. I have black eyes and black eyebrows, and I had almost blonde hair. And I remember looking in the mirror thinking, I have zero idea who you are. I never laughed. I never talked. I had no friends. I walked with my head down all the time, and I had blonde hair. There was not a single thing about me that was the same as the person that he had met. And so, you know, it's about, because of that emotional control, they don't want that strong person anymore. In public, they do, because they want other people to see what a fantastic family they have and how strong they are. But behind closed doors, they're getting the power and control from you. So they're stripping you of everything that makes you, you. I call it toxic identity theft.
That is, yeah, it's quite sad. There's people out there doing this. I mean, what do you do when we have narcissism within the family or within the work situation? I mean, if our boss is a narcissist.
So what I always encourage people to do, because you can do this on a daily basis.
Okay.
Ask yourself what they're seeking.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you are in their life and you're being affected by them, you're supplying them with those things. So what you do so that they're no longer in control is you quit supplying them with those things.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, I work with people that are divorced. It was a toxic marriage. They're divorced and they're trying to co-parent.
Right.
And they think he's such a bad co-parent or she's such an awful co-parent. And I have to remind him, you guys didn't parent together when you were married. Why all of a sudden do you think you're going to be divorced and turn into this happy co-parenting thing?
Yeah.
Because it's not about the relationship for the toxic person. Right. It's about controlling you. So they can still control you with the kids. So if they can, they're going to. And an example of this in my former marriage, you know, when I didn't tell much about my story, but when I ran away, or when I decided that I can't do this anymore, I left everything, left in debt without my kids. Wow. I had already been divorced for 2 years when I left. Wow. And when people hear that, they're like, what? Wow. Because it wasn't about the relationship. He did not care if I had divorce papers in my hand. It was about control and power over me. And he could still do that and frighten me into, you know, allowing him to control me. So I remember I was so excited the day I had divorce papers, because I was like, oh, thank goodness.
Freedom.
Not one single thing changed. The only real thing that changed was now he could have girlfriends because he was divorced. Where before, I mean, he still had them, but he wasn't supposed to. But he would threaten me if he thought I was going to date. Mm-hmm. We couldn't divide any of the money. We had a practice together. He refused to sell to me or let me sell to him. Right. He would not sign a parenting plan, so I couldn't hold him accountable on when I had the kids and when I didn't. There was not one single thing that changed, and I had been divorced for 2 years. Wow. Because the drive wasn't the relationship. That's not what he was there for. He was there to get control and power, so he felt secure. So they're not going to leave until we make them leave. And the way we make them leave is we quit supplying them with those 4 things.
Brilliant. Oh, absolutely. I love that. And I guess, yeah, so the same rule would apply for work colleagues or employers and family relationships. And
remember, because they're emotionally abusive, they're wanting a reaction. So like in the workplace, when the toxic person bashes you in the middle of a meeting in front of everybody, it doesn't necessarily mean that what they're saying is true. They're just trying to get an emotional reaction out of you so they feel in control of your emotions. Yeah. So how you handle that is you don't give them a reaction, or you say stuff like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but that's not the way I see it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. That's not giving a toxic coworker what they want. They want you upset, and they want to create a fight, and they want you to go cause drama by reporting it to the supervisor. Because anytime there's drama and chaos around a toxic person, where is everybody's attention?
On them. Okay.
On them. And they don't care if it's positive or negative attention, as long as they're getting the attention.
Any publicity is good publicity.
Yeah.
Wow. Very interesting.
Now, family situations are a little bit different, because families, you can cut off the toxic coworker other than being in a meeting or having to email. But in family situations, it's a little more difficult. So you just get really picky on the subject matter. I always tell people, yeah, but when I go home to my mom, she always brings up this subject, and we always end up in a fight, and the holidays are awful. Okay. When you feel that subject come up, nobody knows when you have to use the restroom. You feel that subject come up, exit the room, avoid the subject.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're looking for a reaction. And if you don't give it, they're not going to get what they want. So go to the bathroom, go talk to somebody else, go blow your nose, pretend you got a phone call.
Excellent. Brilliant. Yeah, I do that. And it always works. I mean, whenever, there's people around me who start to bring up negative stuff, ignorance is bliss.
Yep. I always tell people, we are so used to trying to stay ahead of toxic people so we can anticipate what's coming.
Yeah.
But, there's sometimes when what you don't know doesn't hurt you.
Yeah, exactly.
Because anything you know is going to cause a reaction, and they're going to love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, it's probably difficult for those who like a bit of gossip. Yep. It takes a little willpower to not react. Oh, wow. So, okay, look, I know how difficult it is to remove oneself from an unhealthy relationship. And I know that the number one thing which we've learned today is, to not give the perpetrator, offender, what they need, and to also try and ignore them to some degree. Mm-hmm. How can you physically remove yourself from this relationship?
So this is a question I get asked a lot, and I'm very hesitant to give a step-by-step here.
Yeah.
The reason that is, I feel liable when I help people write an exit plan, and I need to know what type of personality that they're dealing with.
Okay.
But what I was going to say is, you need to realize too that you've been isolated in these relationships. The toxic personality wants to be your full emotional support. Yeah. So it's going to be difficult for you to see your family, to have a friend circle, to have hobbies, anything that brings you emotion or joy. Mm-hmm. The toxic person is going to make it very difficult. So we start cutting our support systems out, because it's easier for us to have conflict with them than have conflict with the toxic person. Yeah. So the first thing I would say in the exit strategy is make sure you reach out to your support system, because they're not going to understand what you're going through. No. But you are going to need them. Mm-hmm. And then just remind yourself that there is something that the therapists call a trauma bond. Yeah. Okay. When the toxic personality cuts everyone out of your life, the only person we have for any emotional support is them. And they're in control of our emotions. So when we try to leave, we feel like we can't, because it's almost like an addiction. Mm-hmm. They're the only ones that have been supplying us with anything emotional. And so we feel like it's very, very difficult. So the trauma bond is something that people should look up. I actually have one of the episodes on my podcast is trauma bonding. Yeah. And it explains that whole feeling that there's no way you can leave because you can't live without them. And the reason you can't live without them is they've taken everybody out of your life. So you feel like they are the only person that's there for you. And so you're hesitant to leave. I use the description of take like a prisoner of war. that's in a prison camp. They'll escape and they'll be headed out into the jungle, but they don't know what's out there. They don't know if there's food out there. They don't know if it's dangerous out there. So they spend 2 days out there and they decide that they're safer if they go back to the prison camp, because at least they know what to expect. They get food. They know what the schedule is. They know how they're treated. And we are much the same way. It is way easier for us to stay in something that's familiar, even if it's bad, than to step into something that we don't know.
True. Yeah, very true. Absolutely. Okay, right. I love that. And then how about, because it's so easy for us to go back into a similar type of relationship due to the, the cycle that we're in, how do you break away from that cycle?
Well, the first thing you have to realize is being in a toxic relationship is very much like walking into a room that stinks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When you walk into a room that stinks, if you stay in the room, the smell goes away.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not because the room isn't stinky. It's because your body's desensitized you to that smell, and you won't realize how stinky it is until you go back out into fresh air.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A toxic relationship is the same way. When you step into a toxic relationship, their behavior and the treatment becomes very normal to you. Your body desensitizes your feelings so that you can adapt and function and survive within it. So you don't realize that it's that bad. We've all told our friend something that was going on, and our friend looks at us like, "Are you kidding?" And we go, "Oh yeah, it happens every day."
Yeah.
Okay. That is because you've become desensitized to the behavior, so you don't think it's that bad.
True.
So I always encourage people, and people don't love this. I always encourage people, you have to find your identity back before you step into another relationship. Because remember, we talked about it earlier, the toxic identity theft, they take your identity away. So when you're in a toxic relationship, your identity is based on the people around you. You're a girlfriend, you're a wife, you're a mom. So then all of a sudden, when you leave this relationship, who are you when you're sitting by yourself? You have no idea, because everything about you has been taken away and there's nobody there telling you who you're supposed to be. So our first instinct is to run out and get a boyfriend or run out and get a girlfriend, because that at least makes us feel like we have some identity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I always tell people, just understand that that's why you're longing to date to date pretty quickly, is so that you feel like you have an identity, which makes you feel a little more secure. But I always encourage people, do the self-work, dig into who you are and figure out who you are when you are independent.
Yeah.
Because you cannot attract the right people in your life until the wrong people are gone. And you want to attract the person that's not the seventh resume. You want to attract the best resume that there is. And in order to do that and find the person that's right for you, you have to be solid in who you are and reestablish that value system, so you have something to gauge it by.
Self-love all the way. Yeah, I love that. And it's all about loving ourselves first, because unless we love ourselves, how are we going to love anybody else, and how are they going to love us? So yeah.
And you know what? It's funny too, because you've probably heard this too. And I hated it when people said this. Well, you just have to make yourself a priority, or you just need to love yourself more. And I remember thinking, yeah, but nobody's giving me any steps to do that.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. So if your listeners are struggling with that, I encourage you to reach out to somebody who works in this. It could be me, it could be you, somebody who can just give you some steps so that you can start finding your identity, so that you know what it means to love yourself. Because, loving yourself, when we just throw that at you, it's about as effective as the old, just one day at a time. Yeah. I know, we're already doing that. Like, that doesn't help us.
Yeah, like we want practical key steps for that journey. Absolutely. And when if
you find yourself struggling, get a hold of somebody, because there's people out there that can help you re-identify yourself.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of the time it just starts with a breath, just a bit of presence, tuning in to yourself and just realizing who you are, your own existence, which again, we lose our existence in these horrible relationships.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh wow, fantastic. What a show. Thank you so much, Heidi. You've been absolutely amazing. And I love that, you know, you're speaking from experience and you're just so relatable to a lot of other survivors out there who may currently be suffering in these relationships or who may have just come out of these relationships. I just think it's so relatable and just so important what you're doing out there with the education and helping.
Yeah, I remember when I was standing in the middle of that relationship, and I remember thinking, how in the world did you get here? You know, and I remember even saying, if I could just get out of this, I swear I'll never date again. I will never do this again. You know, because I was so confused. And now looking back, obviously there was a bigger plan for me. When I thought I was struggling, I was in training, because I would never be able to do this if I hadn't walked every single step of that. So I'm appreciative of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say, you know, you're a narcissistic expert, toxic relationship expert. And yeah, I think it's fantastic. It'd be great for you to maybe share some like channels where my listeners can find you.
Okay, I have a podcast myself. It's called It's Not Normal, It's Toxic.
Okay, brilliant.
That you can search by the title. If you can't find it by the title, my website is Coaching with Dr. Heidi.
Oh,
and you can get to it there. I also would like to mention, I do run a support group on Facebook. Mm-hmm. I am very picky about how my support group is run, because I want to keep that support group encouraging. So it's called Strength Within.
Okay.
And I should mention that the cover photo is a white flower growing out of a gray rock, because I know there's a fitness strength within and there's a job search strength within. So just know that cover photo, but in that group, you don't have to explain yourself to anybody. Okay. People know exactly what you're going through, because everybody in that group is going through the same thing.
That's beautiful. Oh, fantastic.
You know, the other thing for your listeners who may be questioning, is this relationship, you know, toxic, or am I just overreacting? On my website, there's something called the Toxicity Profile Analysis. Okay. And it's long. It's 106 questions, just 106 yes or no questions. And then you'll get a result on how your life may have been affected by the toxic traits of others. Okay. I get different results. I get results that tell me how many yeses they answer in each one of the character traits, so that if they should choose to talk to me on the phone, I know exactly what type of personality they're dealing with before I ever talk to them, because telling their story is emotional and exhausting. But sometimes just taking that TPA, not even talking to me, sometimes just taking that TPA makes you realize that things that you thought in your life were normal are not normal. So sometimes that taking it has helped some people.
It does, yeah, and I find that anyway with any kind of questionnaire, or, you know, mm-hmm. any self-awareness questions that you answer, you just learn so much about yourself, and it's just kind of even writing things down. It just helps to really understand what's going on in your life, mm-hmm. to have that perspective, because we just get so lost in our thoughts in the process. And so yeah, just having that bit of awareness. So definitely check out that questionnaire, guys, and I'll also be adding all the links within this podcast and YouTube episode, so you can have some direct links to Dr. Heidi. And again, it's been an absolute honor having you on, Dr. Heidi.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love talking about this because it's just so valuable and it's so needed out there, because so many people still don't understand that their partner might be toxic. And yeah, mm-hmm. I never. I just thought it was just normal behavior.
Yep, me too. Yeah. Or I just had to do better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Bad choice in men. Yep. So yeah, hopefully you've learned something today. And again, please do get in touch with myself or Dr. Heidi if you have any questions about this episode. And again, you know, we love you. Please stay safe out there. Stay safe against this virus. Stay safe against these predators who are out there to control you, to manipulate you, to put it nicely. But yeah, honestly, please do stay safe. We love you. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode, everyone. Ciao. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Victim to Victor. Subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes, and be sure to follow the podcast on socials to keep updated on what's next, and share Victim to Victor with family and friends to help grow the community and spread the positive healing energy. You may also wish to join me on the path to self-discovery and sign up to my 12-week self-empowerment plan, which will be linked below.